Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed, along with Justin, Brad, and Dan tonight. We're going to outline the Elite 8H squads, and I'm going to bring to you a breakdown of each of the teams, a slight breakdown, and then we're going to wrap up with maybe the two finalists that I view are going to make the final 16 teams that get entered into the big tournament of the large tournament. So with no real order, we're going to start with the Hipster Killers, and this team is a mix between super young and also a veteran makeup. So I think this team looks like a rebuild. However, it doesn't have any rookie picks in the future, so I'm not sure exactly how it's going to really, come out and how it's going to stay out of the bottom lottery picks that they're going to, give away to somebody else. It does have it's a team with Stroud, but then it also has Tannehill and Levis, so it's got maybe some young and then Tannehill kind of as a elder statesman, but that's kind of not enough in the Clownhead format of two quarterbacks. So then it's got Gibbs as a nice young running back, but the other and then it also has some unknowns with Charbonnet and Roshan and a Shane who just got injured, so a little bit there. And then looking at the wide receivers, it's got Calvin Ridley, who is advanced in age, around 29 years old. Michael Thomas, really has some age to him, and Juju as well. And then it's got some youth with Eli Moore, JSN, who just got injured, recently as well. And then Mingo, do bring some youth, but it's this mix of youth and veterans that I'm not sure is going to, wind out very well. And then with a tight end room of Zach Ertz and Troutman, Brevin, and then Hopkins and Tremble give a young kind of approach. So that's the Hipster Killers, and just not sure where that team's going to go and how it's going to avoid the lottery pick. Cheeky Hobson is the next team I'm going to outline. This team has some nice young quarterbacks with Anthony Richardson and Watson at the top, but nothing beyond that, with Hooker being a redshirt year. JT, Bijan, Dalvin, Akers, James Cook make a nice running back room, one of the better running back rooms in the league. And Amon-Ra with Treylon Burks and Quentin Johnson, really make a formidable young receiving core. Also, I guess Zay Flowers there as well. So, pretty good there. And then DPJ and Mechie, Rondell, and Justin Jefferson, add some depth, there and are really good, with the wide receiver room. At tight end, Cole Kmet, Fant, McKitty, Kraft seems a little bit light. You have to start two. So 3-point PPR, there's just nobody there that's a target, hound outside of Kmet where they don't really throw the ball. So, it has a chance to make the playoffs, but I don't think ultimately it's going to make a deep run in the playoffs. Zeke 1, 2, 3. This team has a good quarterback room, which can propel it up the board with Herbert and Dak and Love. It has 3 starters. It's got Eckler, Kamara, Damian Pierce, Damian Harris as well. So the running back room isn't too bad with 2 starters needed. Wide receivers, Deontay, Kirk, Lazard, Dobbs, MVS, Justin Ross. Kind of give it an average room, I'd say, with 4 starting out of that group. It's really tough to get 4, quality starters there. And then at tight end, Freiermuth and Ferguson make it young. However, just really light when you start 2. So it's kind of a fringe team, going to be on the fringe of making the playoffs or just being on the outside looking in with that room. The Riverbed PT7. This is definitely a rebuild team with 4 first-round picks next year. So a lot of pieces for the future and next year's draft. They've built around some nice young pieces, though. They have Trevor leading the way. Howe are the 2 quarterbacks, and then Devonta, DK, DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Calvin Austin, and JMO round out the wide receiver room. So a lot of youth there as well. At tight end, Ingram and McBride, Musgrave, Kincaid, Hooper, and Gesicki kind of really fill out the tight end room as well, keeping in mind there's 4 first-round picks. Next year, really going to make a push to fill out the running back room, though, with Algier and Foreman kind of is what it's going to build around. So I think this team is going to be a lottery team, and or at least has a strong shot to be a lottery team. And with those 4 picks, it'll really make a move. Malahames, this team has quarterbacks in Mack and Carr and Pickett and Bryce and Lamar. I mean, that's 5. So that's a good amount of quarterbacks. And so you can do a lot with that. However, the running back room is a little bit light with Swift and Mostert, so we don't even know what roles each of them will have with their teams, and so that can be a little bit light. With Garrett Wilson and Christian Watson, Keenan Allen, Robert Woods, Debo, it's a decent receiving room, but not stout, if you will. At tight end, Njoku, Okonkwo, and Woods, Laporta, Goddard. Another strength of this team. It's got a bunch of starters for 2 spots. I do think this team is probably 1 year away from being dynamic, and the temptation will be to move some depth while staying put is probably the most prudent move for this team. Just kind of waiting, letting it grow into its own, and letting some of these guys really take off. Wildflowers is the next team I'm going to preview, and this quarterback room starts with Burrow, Russ, and Baker. So it's good at the top with Burrow, but Russ and Baker are going to be kind of adequate starters, but nothing that's going to knock our socks off. I would think on draft day last year, this team looked a lot better than it does today. It just changes so quick with guys like Russ and Baker, who last year we really thought were onto something with their new teams. And this year we kind of look back and say, wow, they're not near what they were. Rachaad White, A.J. Dillon, Brian Robinson, Khalil Herbert, Rashad Penny, Mitchell, they're pretty good running back room, but nothing stout there. Nothing, that stands out to me. Waddle, Higgins, Addison, Nico Collins, Raheed Shaheed, and Josh Downs, form a decent running wide receiver room. And then Knox and Hurst are kind of below average if you look at just 2 tight ends in a 2 tight end start. So this team's on the verge of the playoffs, but I think they'll be on the outside just looking in. If we look at Etamazak 3, this quarterback room is top heavy. It has 2 starters that have like cheat code. It's got Danny Dimes and Fields. I think both of them could be top 5 quarterbacks. Each week. So, they can really take it there, but if they get hurt, then this team falls apart real quick. And it does have some backup quarterbacks with Philly, Detroit, Indianapolis, Denver, and Cleveland. And I kind of look at the backups of what offenses they run, and do you want a part of those offenses to see if it makes sense. And here they have 3, decent offenses that they can really pull from if there are some injuries. Ramondre, Javonte, and Madison, Kendry, do form a decent running back room, but needing to start 2, it can get light quick with a couple injuries. At wide receiver, it's really the strength of this group. I alluded to Jefferson. That was not Justin Jefferson before. This team has Justin Jefferson and London, and Olave, Pickens, and Sky more. So this team is full of top-end wide receivers. And then it's got Campbell, Chark, and Zay Jones and Bateman for additional firepower, and maybe even some trade bait, for later in the year to make a run. Tight ends are weaker, Dulcich and Irv Smith. So I think this will be a playoff team. The question is really how high will it finish? So, and what moves can be made through the course of the year to just propel it forward. R. Norton, 23. It's got a 3-person quarterback room with Ritter, Purdy, and Hurts. So with Hurts at the top, that's a real strong room. And then you put Pollard and Etienne and Gibson, McKinnon, Gainwell, and Gus Bus at running back. It's okay, not great. But again, this one has a decent receiving room as well with Jamar Chase and Scary Terry, who just got injured again recently. And so we'll see how long he's out. Gabe Davis really taking, flashing and taking it to the next level. And then Jaden Reed, a young rookie that we'll see what happens in Green Bay, and Josh Palmer and Chris Claypool, give it kind of an average look after the top 3, I'd say. Tight end with Pitts and Johnson make the 1-2 punch, real good. But behind that, there's not much there. I think this is a fringe playoff team, but I think in the playoffs, it's kind of one and done. So I do think it'll get there, but it'll be a one and done in the divisional rounds. Nick Primo, the quarterbacks are good at the top. Josh Allen, Rodgers are real good at the top. And with Henry and Chubb at running back, and Cooper Kupp, Diggs, Pittman, and Ayuk at receiver, Andrews and Schultz at tight end, you just look at that starting lineup and you're like, wow, this is good. It's really a good lineup. The problem is right behind it, there is just not much. Jacoby Myers and Hodgkins are the best players in the flex and on the bench. So it's just nothing there behind that. And I think this team is probably just one injury away from a lottery pick. And I really think that's the most likely outcome, even though the top is really good. So that's kind of what we have with some of the non-playoff teams, and then are the non-top two teams, I should say. And then I want to outline last year's winner overall, won the whole tournament, is Cowboys and Utes, and I do not have them in my top two. So and not to think that they got lucky last year, but just things lined up for this squad, and I think it's going to have trouble getting back to the tournament this year. So this team, did win last year, so I don't want to undersell it. And if it comes back and wins this division, it'll get the Empire pot for both years. So that's kind of cool. It'll be a back-to-back winner. So it does have the option if it can get the one seed, or I'm sorry, win out, which I think it'll be a good team. I just don't think it'll be a top two team. That it would be something to speak of to take that Empire pot home. But if it misses out, then there'll be a new winner that we'll have in the Elite Eight. And I think what kind of happened, in one of the rules that I always stand by, is that anytime you have Pat Mahomes, you have a chance. And so this team has Pat Mahomes, and it has Tua as its quarterbacks. And then the Tyreek stack with Tua make it for a pretty nice situation. And if you look at Amari Cooper and Chris Godwin and CeeDee Lamb, the trio with Tyreek makes for a great receiving core. Mooney and Tony, Alec Pierce, Michael Wilson, some options for the flex and depth. Aaron Jones, Najee allow for the running back room to be good. Hawkinson, Kittle, Meyer, and Ottman, make for a good tight end room. Here's the problem: just behind the quarterbacks of Tua and Mahomes, there's no depth, and there's no first-round pick to go get more depth. So an injury to Tua, which is it feels likely almost, or an injury to Mahomes, and all of a sudden there's a 0 point going on in one of the quarterback spots. And so that, with no firepower to go solve the problem. And so that's where I think it kind of runs into, an issue this year with where the team is. So Cowboys and Utes going to be on the outside of the big tournament looking in, but, be in the playoffs and division round and have a chance to really knock out and get hot at the right time and actually, take home that Empire pot. Looking at my first team in the top two, which we're going to bring up on the screen, is M. Railston, and that's M. Railston 1013. This team last year was actually the number one seed. However, it finished second even after getting to the overall Final Four. So as you look here and see the team, it's got overall really good depth at each position, and that's what makes this team really, stout. And why it was the number one seed and why it went to the Final Four. It's got Goff, Stafford, and Kyler. So it's got three quarterbacks for the quarterback room, all to have a chance to really be, stout. It's got CMC, Jacobs, Mixon, and Monty in the running back room for two spots. It's got D-Hop, Judy, Lockett, Beckett, Thielen, and Reynolds making up the wide receiver room. And then, just like I mentioned before, anytime you have Mahomes, you have a chance. Well, anytime you have Kelsey in the 3-point PPR team with Waller, you have a chance. And then it has Conklin as well. And anybody that knows me knows that I have this man crush on Conklin. So, I do think that this team really has a good chance at returning to the Final Four, this year, and really has a good chance in this particular division as well as being, one of the top two seeds and advancing. And then the team that's going to get here as well, or that I view is going to be, kind of knock Cowboys and Utes out of the playoffs or the big playoffs, is going to be UW. And I see that team is just up here on the screen for you to take a look at as well. And this team has Geno, it has Cousins, and Jimmy G. And so it's got three quarterbacks for those two spots, and that gives it a little bit of depth where, an injury happens. Saquon, Pacheco, Breece Hall, Walker, Sanders, and Connor Ford as well make the running back room real nice and deep. A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Evans, Hollywood Brown, Brandon Cooks, Dotson make the receivers really stout and deep. And at tight end, Everett and Henry, feel a little bit light, but it's still pretty solid and a chance to have two top 10 tight ends as well. Can take this through the playoffs, and I'm just going to kind of get them into that number two seed in this division and take it there. So as I look to Dan for just kind of what the computer or the simulation says, I guess we'll turn it over to him and see how I did compared to the simulation, as I don't know what that simulation was.
So the simulation we run is based off 100 different settings and provides us the best opportunity to who is the best two teams in the division. First, in no particular order, but the two that they predict to go to the playoffs are Cowboys and Utes and you dumbass. So you got one out of the two right compared to what the computer says.
Okay. So we're it's kind of interesting that last year's number 1 seed was minused out, and that's a team that I liked, and this year.
I don't think it takes into consideration what you have for draft capital and what you're able to do later on in the season. But if all things, if everything just perfect world, it would be Cowboys and Utes and you dumbass going to the big playoffs.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that, Dan, and thank you guys. That is our preview for Elite 8 letter H, and so we're looking forward to some more previews coming at you.